Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unfiltered Vet Discussions. Today I am flying solo. Normally you see me with a coterie of other communicators in this field. If you'd like to learn more about Unfiltered Vet Discussions, you can read our bios at www.unfilteredvetdiscussions.com. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on the social media platforms listed on our website. You can also listen to us wherever you listen to your podcasts, including Apple, Google, and Spotify. We love to hear from our listeners, so please share your thoughts and opinions and comments, and we will respond. Today's topic is the more things change, the more they stay the same. And my guest is Marnette Falley. Many of
I'm
you.
so thrilled.
Yes, well, you should be. And what's interesting is many of you are probably scratching your heads and saying, "Wait, I know that name. It sounds familiar." And it should, because for many years, Marnette was the editor and editorial director for Veterinary Economics, and probably a dozen years or more. And you could read her column monthly. Now, however, Marnette pulled a Rip Van Winkle from the veterinary industry in 2019 and went on to do other things. About a year ago, she woke up, shook her cobwebs out, and has returned from her sabbatical and is back in the field. Welcome back, and welcome to the podcast, Marnette.
Well, thank you, Peter. I love the sabbatical. So when I started, so my dad was a professor at K-State and always took his sabbatical. And when I started many, many moons ago at Veterinary Economics, I told my boss at the time that someday I wanted to take a sabbatical. It took me a long time, but I did it.
You did, and you took it at a distance from a field that you had been embedded in for almost 2 decades or so. So let's get caught up. Let's find out what you've been up to when you were doing your Rip Van Winkle, and when we spoke, I know you mentioned some coaching and facilitating outside of the veterinary field. Give me the backstory that takes us up to the present.
Yes, for sure. So you're exactly right. I'm working as a coach and a facilitator. When I left DVM 360, we were doing so much work in adult learning for the Fetch conferences and in thinking about how we could really influence a market more and what it takes to actually help practices change, all those things. And I was so excited about that stuff. I went to do training in just that. And that's what I do today is work as a coach. I help people change their behaviors, achieve their goals, get unstuck. I do coaching like that with teams also. And as a facilitator, I work with organizations about forward looking. It's really not that different than the coaching. Like we're stuck. We can't seem to get from here to there in the ways that we want to. What's in our way? How are we going to see it differently so that we could do something different? And I love the work. I was so lucky to work in the veterinary market and love it as much as I did for all those years. I really kind of never thought a second career could be as fun. And then it is. It's just as fun.
Very, very cool. So, I mean, the term coach is used in sports, and it's used in business, and it's used in life. Is there a definition, quote unquote, of coach, or is it really you adopt it to whatever your passions are?
There probably is a formal definition. What the way I like to think about it is a coach is somebody who helps you see whatever it is differently. Until you see it differently, you can't really do anything differently. And so we talk about coaching being a co-created experience. There's literally there are parts of your brain that light up differently when you meet with someone who meets you with inquiry, which is what a coach does. We don't advise, we don't mentor, we ask questions. And that being with you and asking questions literally activates parts of your brain that other types of modalities don't, and magic happens. So, because of that, creating of that space, people have new ideas. And that's the exciting part, right? Is sitting with somebody and they all of a sudden just see that they could something different that makes a big difference for them.
Now, I don't know if this is going to be a curveball or a knuckleball or a fastball right down the center of the plate. I'm a baseball metaphor there, but in the veterinary field, we use the term mentoring exhaustingly in all sorts of levels.
Mhm.
And we really don't use the term coach all that often. Can you differentiate between a mentoring relationship and a coaching relationship, and are they overlapped? Is it a Venn diagram where they overlap a little bit, or are they two separate? So I don't know if that's a curveball or not, but help me understand the difference between a mentor and a coach.
It's a great question. And so for me, those are really very quite different, quite different. So a mentor is somebody who has experience and can share their experience with you. We often expect our mentors to advise. So here's the situation that I'm in. Give me ideas about what to do. And while a coach might do some of that, so you're not wrong that there is maybe some overlap. A coach really works hard not to advise. The training and coaching is about not giving advice. And we all have an advice monster habit that people say blah 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 and we're like, here's what you should do. And that is extremely unhelpful. People really don't want your advice. Your advice is not that good. How could you expect to know more about that person's situation and the challenges they're up against than they do, right? It's really almost to me, given my training today, insulting, right? And so a coach is somebody who listens, really, really listens to the words you say, listens to the way you say it, is there with you, present with you, and then brings inquiry. And like I said, that inquiry raises things that telling and suggesting and even discussing don't bring up for people. I'm obviously a
So
huge fan of coaching.
yes, I got that, and I've used coaches, read a lot of books about them, and I know there's some certification processes. I don't want to get into that as much
Mhm.
as tapping into the fact that for half a dozen years or so, you were outside of the field and you were working with others who had needs that were not in the veterinary realm, which means, and as a coach, you learn while also coaching.
For sure.
What did, what did you learn from your work outside of the profession that maybe you can
Mhm.
translate into opportunities to help the profession going forward?
Yes. So one of the big things I learned is what I'm talking to you about, which is the power of inquiry rather than of advising. And I I came to this because I needed it myself as a leader. I was at my wit's end. I just had taken on more and more responsibility, and I'm like, I just need the people around me to be stronger. And I've used every tool I have. And so the first coaching book I read is called The Coaching Habit, and it talks about the five coaching questions you can ask as a leader. The subtitle's great. It's change the way you talk and change the way you lead forever. And I did that. And that's one of the things that led me to coaching is that worked for me. So inquiry as a superpower is one of the things I continue to learn and practice. Leadership at every level is another thing that has been really important to me. So I changed my definition of leadership. I'm taking this from the adaptive leadership space, and I did my leadership training to be a trainer in leadership at the Kansas Leadership Center, which uses that school of thought. And it's so leadership to me is the difficult work of inspiring others to do things they otherwise would not do. And I love that because it makes every person at every level of every organization um, part of the leadership team. Everybody's responsibility to lead and influence. And I think that mindset is a very important thing to bring back to the veterinary market, but to any market, to any business, to anyone trying to run any organization ever, anywhere. Um, and then I've spent this whole 6 years learning more about what it takes to change behavior for a team, for an organization, for a person. And it's quite hard. And then it's also not. right? Like, so it's exciting to see when people make dramatic progress. And then we're going to get to this because I saw the preview, right? But it's frustrating to see this profession that I really care about so much, I feel like not make very fast progress.
It's there's a great quote that I use in my talks about leadership from Harry Truman, who, if I'm well, he's from the your neck of the woods in the middle of the country. My definition of leader is a man who can persuade people to do what they don't want to do and like it. So,
Yes, that. And
so
I mean, there's so much powerful stuff about tapping into what people care about most and helping them see how what they care about most could align here and let's move forward, right? And it's super powerful. So yes, that.
yeah, it's interesting how we focus in the veterinary field so much on left brain and tangibles and not so much on the right brains and the purpose of what we do and why we do it. Um, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about games and coaching, and you talked about bringing Legos to your events and encouraging serious play. And I
Mhm,
love serious play seems like an oxymoron. So, what does serious play look like?
mhm. So, one of the things I discovered when I left my job is that I was far too serious. I needed more play in my life. There's some quippy social media thing that says the opposite of play is not work, the opposite of play is depression. And I'm like, wow, I don't play anymore. I'm like, I'm too busy with these serious problems. I don't have time for that. And so part of my new path is that play recovery. And so I care really deeply about that. I don't think that we can show up as our best selves if we don't have that lightness. There's all the research and innovation space which I work in about the new ideas come from that space of lightness and not from the must spaces. I think people respond better. This is the same thing as inquiry versus telling. When you must should at people, they get tight. And when you what if we, how might we get loose and more interesting things come. So that's baked into basically all of my current stance. And I love, love, love it. So I do many, many playful things that I did not used to do. But I want that play in any meeting that I'm facilitating. And it keeps us creative. And then I am trained in literally, it's called Lego serious play. So this is a facilitation technique that uses Lego bricks to help people or groups explore really complex issues and find creative solutions. And so this is a system of facilitation that was originally developed by Lego, and then they trained facilitators to use it because it was so helpful to them. So, but even when I'm not doing Lego serious play, which is the technique, I take Lego and I take play and I take toys of all kinds because I want that playful energy, that light energy.
I need to ask you to repeat something for me. And
Please.
you talked about must, should.
Hmm.
And then you talked about the opposite, and I couldn't note what the opposite was. I
Oh,
would suggest that way too many leaders, which are really what managers do, are you should. So if you could elaborate a little bit more on must, should, and then the opposite,
mhm.
which is where you're focusing on.
Yeah, must, should is just so often the stance that we take as I'm going to use managers to your language, managers in organizations where this is where we need to go. This is what I want to do. This is what I need you to do to get us there. Do it, do it, do it. Right? It's prescriptive um, and it's using the power of the position rather than that leadership energy that we talked about. And so I'm always like, let's step away from that. We overuse the power of position to authority people. And instead, what if we want that discretionary energy, if we want them to bring their passion to something, then we need to invite it in. And I'm back to inquiry, right? So how might we? How could we? What would it look like if we? So all that positive inquiry space where you explore is where I think you get that buy-in and energy, and and back to co-creation. You make something together that everybody's excited to push forward, rather than I'm that manager pulling everybody into where they want them to be,
So what do you
which
do
is
for fun?
exhausting.
Yeah, I like
Oh,
I like the bright brain stuff that you're focusing on, but you were talking about bringing serious play, but what do you do for fun?
oh, well, I play with my pup. I have a game group, so I meet a group of people almost every week and play board games. I love it. My favorite game is Wingspan, so Wingspan for the win. It's a game about birds. It's a beautiful, beautiful game about birds. And I have played thousands of hours now of Wingspan. And I play in my garden, so that is part of my play. And I have an art practice, which is part of my play.
That's very cool. And I see
Yeah,
plants behind you that are real plants and not silk. So you do have a green thumb. Um,
I love the plants.
okay, veterinary medicine. You've been out of the field for, 5, 6 years. You woke up, you shook your head out, you took a couple of steps in, and what have you seen that has changed in your time away?
What have I seen that's changed? I mean, there are obviously things that change every day. So there's been a lot more consolidation since I left the market. Um, there's a lot of talk, at least, about AI. I'm not sure that I have seen a lot of adoption. There's always new technology. Again, I'm not where I so I'm I'm sure there are things that change. Where I get caught, which is what you're going to ask me, I know you are, is where the things haven't changed and I get all frustrated. So um I feel like I stepped out. It really is like I stepped off. Rip Van Winkle is not a bad analogy. And I went and played in all these other spaces that are exciting to me about leadership and creativity and innovation and strategy and how you make things different and how you help people achieve their vision. It's all exciting. Some of the reason it's exciting is that it's new for me, right? Not completely new, but this entire focus is new. Lots of things to learn, exciting. And then I came back, and people I know and people I don't know all talk to me about the same five problems that I worked on in veterinary medicine for the whole of my life. And I just wanted to shoot myself, like just frustration. Um, and some of that is my experience, right? Like I worked on these same problems for a couple of decades, and did we make headway? Not the same, not the kind of headway I wanted, right? But this whole like, oh, I went and did all this new stuff. It was like I was running 1,000 miles a 1,000 miles an hour on the side, and I came back, and the island is just still feels like it's right where I left it, which is, I mean, it's lovely to find the people there again, and the joyful things about the market are still there. But I'm like, oh, why can't we make progress faster?
It is it's funny because you and I have spoken a couple of times now in since you and I reconnected. And when we first spoke, it was like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I jested that I have, as a veterinarian, I'm also a hoarder. Many of my generation can understand that. So I have decade or so of vet economics in file boxes in a storage shed because at some point in time I'm actually going to go back and look at them. Um, and I would suggest that many of the articles that were in Vet Economics and into DVM 360 um, a decade ago are being recycled with different titles and the same author now. And I think the issues, and it's interesting because I went back 25 or 30 years because during the pandemic I had some time, and articles about diversity in the profession are not new. They are um, 25, 30 years old. Consolidation is new because it's escalated and grown. technology obviously has escalated and grown, but workforce issues, too many, too few, staff retention, I mean, it's deja vu all over again. So I fully appreciate you coming out of your um, self-directed coma back into the profession and saying, wait a second, um, everybody's older, but they're not any smarter. And
Mhm.
you've been in this profession for a while before you went away and came back. Can you explain any reason we are so reticent to change? And now as a coach, you work with all sorts of different people with all
Mhm.
sorts of different needs. Why is change so difficult? And why is change so difficult in the veterinary profession?
Mhm. Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts about that, and I'm curious what you think back, right? So one of the things that I think about it is um, that we're really talking about um, a giant culture, right? So the culture of veterinary medicine. And so when you think about, let's say you went into a practice and a practice has a culture, and that practice is helping them in these ways and hurting them in those ways. The whole profession has a culture too. And I think there are some things about that culture that reinforce the current behavior. When we talk about organizations, we say um, every organization is perfectly tuned to deliver the results it delivers today. If you want it to be different, you have to change something about the way the organization works. So there are all the systemic pressures, there's all the ways we hire, there's the way we think about things, right? It's the soup we swim in that makes it that way. And because it feels and culture feels invisible, you don't see those pressures. Um, I think inside veterinary medicine, we maybe aren't as aware of those. And there are things about the culture, by the way, of course, that I love, that I think it makes the profession so great. It's the reason I stayed for so long. And yet I think there are probably things about it that also reinforce these behaviors. So that's been interesting to me to think about it as if it were an organization or culture. What would you do or say if that were the case, right? So that's interesting. The other thing I think about is I love the model. It's called the immunity to change model. And I think, and we all have this, right? When we bump into a hard change, it's usually because we have some very important um, commitment to something opposite of the change. So we have that feeling that we've pressed on the gas because we're like, I want to change this, but we're also pressing on the brake because there's some hidden commitment that's very, very important to us that's counter to this. And so it would be super interesting to take these behaviors that we wish for in veterinary medicine, things we say we want, and then really explore what is the hidden competing commitment and what would it take to move through that, right? So I think both of those frameworks that I now use all the time in my work are interesting and apply here.
Um, so many things to unpack there. I just got done reading a book about GE, General Electric,
Mhm.
and their culture, and in many cases, their reticence to change is what did them in.
Mhm.
As I could say for Polaroid, as I can
Mhm.
say for Toys R Us. And that is because what got us here probably will get us there, but that's not always the case. The immunity to change model is really interesting. If we look at can we give a vaccination to change the immune system to stimulate change from that standpoint? And I think that's maybe what a coach does is you give a vaccination to stimulate change. So maybe you should become
Mhm.
a veterinarian. Um, the brain, the amygdala, is the source in the brain that responds to change. It's also the site in the brain that responds to great torture because it's the reptilian portion of the brain. And so when people are asked to change, they feel as if they're going through torture. you are very fortunate or unfortunate, or now have to think back and look at the fact that you missed the pandemic in the veterinary field. At least as an active participant, you were probably a pet owner and had to deal with curbside and other things as a
Mhm.
um, consumer. I'm just curious as because a lot of what you wrote in your editorials was about your client experience. Talk to me now as somebody who's been peripheral to the, oh, I want to go one direction before we go to your pets and your consumer
Okay.
side. Um, you know the difference between a rut and a grave?
Tell me.
The, the depth and how long you're in it.
Oh, yes, that's
So
nice.
many veterinarians are working their rut deeper and deeper, and it will
Mhm.
ultimately become their grave. So anyhow, your job as a coach is to get them out of the grave.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
and I think so. I know you have a next question, but I think the pandemic changes are super interesting because they prove that we can. So if we must, we can. And I mean, veterinarians and their teams did amazing things to manage to what was required in that time. So it's not that we can't. It's not that it's so painful we'll die, right? But when you have the choice about it, what feels safe, whether it's safe or not, is the old thing that you're used to. And so any kind of real growth, you have to step into that discomfort because you choose to and not because you're made to, right? And that choosing is an act of courage, right? Um, and the the less often you do that, the more uncomfortable it is. And so there is a part of me that says, could we still leverage that memory of the changing for the pandemic to help people say, oh, I won't die if I try this, right? Um, anyway,
no, I
interesting
talk about that all the
side
time
note.
because
Hmm.
we were able to, and I jest, and by the way, anybody who listens to this, if you were the first veterinary hospital in the United States to go curbside, let me know because I can't figure out who was the one who was the alpha, the beta patient or practice
Hmm.
number one that went curbside. That's
Yeah.
neither here nor there. But we changed to curbside, we changed to online appointments, we changed to online pharmacy, food delivery, taking payments over the phone or at the car side. And unfortunately, what I have started to see is a boomerang effect where we have
Hmm.
tried to go back to the way things were in before March of 2020. So you wrote a lot about your experiences as a pet owner in your editorials and your columns for veterinary economics. You left the field. Now you are a true consumer without a platform. What would you write about your experiences as a consumer if you were writing a Dear Veterinary Profession letter? You're writing a Dear Veterinary Profession letter.
Mm.
What would you write as a consumer during the pandemic? And now, currently, because you've got Marley on the couch
Mhm.
next to you, and Marley's a special needs dog, if I'm not incorrect. I think you mentioned that. So, talk to me
Mhm.
about your experiences now as a consumer, because I'm going to expand on that once you answer the question.
Okay. Well, so yes, I have Marley. And she's 3. I've had her about a year and a half. She's the toughest dog I've ever had. So she's I think she's the only dog I've ever adopted not as a puppy. So she was a rescue and she came with behavior problems and um she's reactive, and I don't know. She's the toughest, and she's going to be the most wonderful, most rewarding. She is smart. She is loving. She is the greatest dog ever. So I had one of those moments where I'm like, oh, what did I do? And also, this dog needs me, and I need her. She's amazing. So, um, always the generosity of spirit. I think my veterinarians are doing the best they can. They're wonderful people. And then they've never once talked to me about even obvious behavior problems. So I take her in to do anything. And she's gotten, by the way, remarkably better over the year and a half, but I work on it with her every single day. So we work on it all the time. Um, but they never even talk to me about it. They're like, wow, she's mouthy, or wow, she's jumpy, or wow, but they don't suggest resources. I mean, they just don't ask me anything about it. What's this like at home? I mean, any question at all. And I'm all about that inquiry, right? And I got no inquiry. So they're delivering on the needs that we all agree on as sort of concrete needs. She needs her vaccinations because, and she needs whatever cause, but they're not exploring what the problems could be. And this is a dog that was released because of her behavior, right? So she has obvious behavior problems when we first go in there. So that's interesting to me. That's not new. We talked about that for my whole life. So, welcome to the party, poor people who happen to be my veterinarians, right? This is a super common problem for pet owners that their veterinarian doesn't lean in and kind of partner in a way. And then the other thing that I'm grumpy about is that the last time I took her in just for her annual visit, um, I asked them to look at a couple things. Everything was fine. And then they discovered that she had an ear infection and probably allergies every which way to Sunday. Because I'm like, why is she licking her feet? She has this spot on her paw. They did cytology. So they did all the things for her. And they sent me home with it was like 6 medications, everything. I mean, I felt like, I don't know, welcome to nursing. And so I'm like a little overwhelmed when I left. And then again, there's nothing new about this. My dog is losing her mind in the reception area. And I handed over my credit card without ever looking at the bill. And when I got to the parking lot, it was $800. And when I got off the medications, everything came back. And so I'm like, God, like it makes for me that cost of care escalation personal. Um, and the fact that they didn't give me an estimate, I'm like, you should warn your people that this is coming. And then, wow, you didn't fix my problem, and I lose faith, right? And this is a complicated problem. Like getting her so that she doesn't have these things is a total full-time job. But I don't feel like I have a partner in it.
Interesting. Well put. I don't feel like I have a partner. And by the way, in your description, in the lack of inquiry, it sounded like must, should instead of might, could, you know.
Oh, it was. I felt judged.
Yeah.
It
I
was,
think
I
you
mean,
have
it
some,
was must, should. Yeah.
yeah, I think you have stories to tell. And I think, welcome back to veterinary medicine,
Thank you.
Rip Van Winkle. Um, and now that you are back, and now you have this background and maybe are continuing to look, what do you see and what do you hope for as your next role or role going forward? How do you want to be an influencer in the veterinary field?
hmm So, I mean, I think so I'm looking for the right places, right, to be an influencer. Where can I make the most difference? Where would it help, right? Um, and so there are a couple of places where I think I have stuff to offer. So, um, I mean, leadership has always been my space. I really think there's opportunities to grow leaders at every level in veterinary practices. I want to be a champion for that, um, for those ideas that we talked about around leadership. And the other thing we talked about the importance of play, this lightness of spirit. I think the veterinary profession needs some more of that also, joy in practice. And I started an organization of like-minded veterinary professionals. We started something called the Joy Project, the Veterinary Joy Project, and we're trying to bring people together around that. So build a community of people that's caring, that will help spread joy, that will support people on helping find more joy, and that will share resources. So that's one of the things I'm trying. So I'm going to talk about joy and play and lightness more. I'm partnering with folks to try and give it some more noise when I do that. So those are the things that I'm thinking about, sort of in pause-ish kind of ways. And then I'd love to do more facilitation in the market. And so I think when I was working, I would have said I don't need a facilitator. I can make my meetings go well. I know how to run a meeting. Are you crazy? I can run a meeting. And then having someone facilitate conversations to get you to different outcomes is really, really powerful. And I think there's some important conversations that need to be had in veterinary medicine and that are the opportunity for them is happening, but I'm not sure we're getting all the goodness out of it. Because in my day, we weren't getting all the goodness out of it, even when I was doing my best. And I have new tools and new insights and new strategies that mean that in a room, you get more interesting outcomes. Um, and I'd like to find opportunities to do that, right? Just to get the thinkers of the market together, to get organizations that have a lot of opportunity to influence the market, um, to be clients of mine so that I can help them influence more. So leadership at that level too, like how could an organization leverage their influence and inspiration, leadership, in a different way to make change. So those are the I know that feels like very like not very concrete ask when I say it out loud, but that's what I really want is to help people and organizations influence more for the good of the whole market.
I think there's a need, um, but because of change, there's a resistance.
Mhm.
And I have all sorts of ideas we'll talk about offline, but I want to go back to the Veterinary Joy Project for just a moment because I'm all over that baby. That there's 110,000 or so licensed veterinarians in the United States that could use some joy.
Mhm.
You can't get enough joy. I don't think I've ever heard somebody say, I'm overjoyed, you know,
Right.
my cup runneth over with joy. Um, okay, where can people learn more about the Veterinary Joy Project? How can people become involved and how can they help spread the gospel of joy? Or Marnette,
Mhm.
whichever.
Oh no, the gospel of joy. So we have a LinkedIn organization page. Please come follow. Please participate. Please add on. Please reach out. You can find me obviously on LinkedIn, and I would love to talk to anybody who's excited about this. We're trying to build a cohort, right? And I think the word community is getting overused, but really community is so important. And I think that people are lonely in their thinking. And so finding ways to get really connected to other people who are passionate, I think is one of the things we're hoping to do. We also have a Facebook page. So LinkedIn page, Facebook page, wherever you go, play your social media, come find us. We're waiting there for you and we're excited.
And if you just Google Veterinary Joy Project, you can find it, both the LinkedIn
Mhm.
and the Facebook page. So
Yeah.
let's bring joy back to a profession that really should
Mhm.
be. I say that we need to put the fun back into veterinary medicine because
Mhm.
who else gets to play with puppies and kittens all day? I mean,
Mhm.
we get to do so many cool things. And anyhow, I very much appreciate the positivity that you're bringing back to the profession. I think that sleep was good for you.
It
Um,
was good.
so let's just wrap it up with two questions. Final words of wisdom. You've got an audience here, maybe six people, whatever
Mhm.
it is. What would you
Mhm.
tell the audience of veterinarians and veterinary team members and leaders that they need to hear based upon your, and I don't want to say years of experience, but by your knowledge base?
Mhm. So the most common wish I have for people, um, in terms of exercising more leadership is ask more open-ended questions. So if there were one behavior, ask more open-ended questions. And that gets me right back to I mean, I'm on positive inquiry again. I never budge off really, but how might we kinds of questions. Um, because if you change the way you talk, it'll change the way you lead forever. Um, so that, and then not surprisingly, given the conversation we just had, um, find more joy, right? I wish this for everybody. You can't show up as your best self and be a great leader at work and support the people around you if your cup is not full. If you're running at empty all the time, which many people are, this is part of our current culture is that it's prestigious, in fact, to be running on E consistently. You do not have it to give. And so, how can you be generous of spirit with every dumb pet owner who comes in? It's not possible. How can you be, it's okay to make a mistake and support your people in growth? You just can't because you just don't have the juice, right? So, find more joy for yourself, is my plea.
I'm all over that plea. I echo that plea. Find more joy for yourself, and you'll find joy for others when you do so.
Mhm.
How can people find you if they want to reach out, check in with you, say hello, and welcome back?
LinkedIn, come find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to
Okay.
talk to all of you.
Marnette 2.0, so wonderful to speak with you.
Oh, this was so much fun. Thank you, Peter.
On that note, thank you for listening to today's podcast. We look forward to creating future episodes for you. If you like today's podcast, we invite you to listen to other podcasts listed on our website or on the podcast platforms. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on the social media platforms listed on your website. Until next time, I'm Dr. Peter Weinstein. I'm here with Marnette Falley, and we look forward to bringing joy back to the veterinary profession. Until next time.